Yeah, I'm glad we got to meet now in person. And, we're here in our podcast studio in downtown Mount Gretna. And Jason, you are where right now?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Nice. And that's a beautiful office conference room you have.
Yeah, it's a backdrop.
I know it's clean. It's clean, brother.
I got a piano and a slot machine behind me. Bachelor life.
Oh, I love it. I often get a chance to talk to various customers over the years of Lupine lighting systems. And, I get a call and it's a voice from the past sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I know who this is, but I can't quite place it. And one such call came in last week. It was Javier, right?
Yep.
From Colorado, from Denver. And he was saying to me that he's been running again with his Tuesday night group that leaves from his craft brewery. I said, oh, wow. So that's a cool thing. And yeah. I still forget the name of it, but I definitely get through Denver and I'll be stopping in there for sure.
I'll give a shameless plug. It's called Chaluna Brewery because it's my local brewery right down here, like a half mile away from my house.
Oh, perfect. So he says he has a run group that meets there and that he wanted something a little lighter in terms of battery for his Betty, which he uses to run with. And so we talked about that for a while and said, yeah, that's possible. And then he asked me if I had remembered Jason Romero. And I said, oh, man, that name sounds familiar to me. And he said, I talked him into getting a Lupine light to run with. And so then I said, oh, okay, it's coming back to me. So then that launched into the Leadville 100 ultra marathon run. And he said, yeah, he did that. And, they first wouldn't let him in with a guide because he's blind basically, but he seems to be able to get by with your light. And so I said, oh, I got a podcast with him and hear that story or in your whole story overall. So I guess that's where I wanted to start, was to get the details of that story. If you want to share.
Yeah, I'd love to. And, backing up for a second, just to the connection with Javi. So I have this degenerative eye disease. And I'm 51 now. I was diagnosed when I was 14, and the doctors told me I would have no light perception. Like, it'd be total lights out by the time I was 30. So I'm 20, or I've survived their prognosis by 20 years. I don't see that great. I know, look like I can see, but I got like these two little tunnels like this. I get like about 2,200, 2,400. I can't see what you look like on the screen. I can see like when you move. I know you have like your Caucasian, probably like a white beard or facial hair and like a darker hat or something. So I see like movement, and that's what I key off of a lot. And at nighttime, on top of that, I have severe night blindness. So, and Javi also has severe night blindness as well. And he knew about my condition. His wife had known about my condition. And, I was telling them, because they ask about my eyes a lot, and I'm like, yeah, it's getting worse. The nighttime stuff really makes it worse. I live in Colorado, so we get a lot of days of sunshine, and that really helps out with me being able to be mobile. But when I go out and I try to do some of these different events, the lighting for me just wasn't working. And I was using like 300, 500 lumen headlamps, the ones you get, the high-end, quote, high-end ones at REI. And it just wasn't working for me. There was one point I was running, a trail race at nighttime with 4 headlamps, one on my head, 2 on each one of my pack, and then one around my waist. And it wasn't light. It wasn't giving me enough light. And I thought my long distance running career was over. And then enters Javi in Chaluna Brewery. And Javi tells me about the Betty. And, I hear like Javi, and I'm like, well, do you run long distance? He's like, no, but I mountain bike, and I've used this mountain bike. I'm like, I'm not sure it's the same type of application. I was very skeptical. And he kept telling me things like 5,000 lumen. I'm like, it's impossible. It's a marketing ploy. I've seen a bunch of headlamps with other stuff. Well, I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to look into this because I believe Javi. And I was backed up against a wall. I was going to have to stop doing what I love to do. And frankly, it helps my mental health and keeps me out of, there's the whole story with depression and all that stuff, but running keeps me healthy, physically and mentally. So I went to the Lupine website. In this particular Leadville, I've ran Leadville. This is going to be my 6th time towing the start line. And I knew this time I was going to end up descend. There's a part in there that's called Hope Pass, and I was going to end up descending that in the dark because I was going to run the first 50 miles with a friend, help them get to the cutoff in time. And then I was going to have to fast track back to make sure I was hitting the cutoffs. But that was going to make me descend what's called Hope Pass in the dark. And Hope Pass is at its peak, it's 12,600 feet elevation. And then it's probably about like a 5-mile descent through very thick single track, highly rooted, over rivers, through rivers. And it's at mile 50, it goes mile 55 to 60 of the race. And it's just a beast. I mean, even in the daylight, it's very difficult for me to get down. So the story keeps coming. And I ended up finding the Betty. I did as much research as I could, and I saw tremendous reviews with it, and I plunked down, my cash, got the Betty. The Betty, I had to actually order expedited delivery because it took me so long. I was dragging my heels, and it got to me. You guys got it to me like the day before I was going up to Leadville for the race. I called you guys up. I was like, I need expedited delivery. This is my situation. You're like, oh, we're totally in. We'll get it to you, and you guys got it to me. So thank you.
Yes.
And I ended up, getting up to Leadville, and I got the thing, right here. This is the famed Betty that I used, with my headlamp, and I had my battery stick, and you guys helped me with, having enough time to be able to get through the night. And what ended up happening was incredible because I hadn't field tested the Betty. I mean, I'd went out of my hotel like the day before Leadville. But I was having a good run, help my friend get to the turnaround point of 50 miles. And then I left her and I started running back, and I was running up the backside of Hope Pass. It was starting to get dark. I did have a guide with me, and I was like, we got to go. So we were going as hard as we could up the top. And when we got to the top, the sun was down. And then I pulled out my Betty, and he looked at me because he had known me before. Neither one of us had experienced, anything with lupine lighting. I was like, this thing seems really bright. Let's go. And I put the thing on, and I had 5,000 lumen about blinded my guide. So it was like the blind leading the blind. And
so classic.
Yeah. And both of us, I put the thing on, shined on the trail. I was like, oh my God, this, I'd never experienced anything like that. And it's pitch black. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. There is no light pollution, anything. You're at 12,000 feet up in the mountains. And, he can see stars and the moon. I couldn't see anything. It's thickly wooded forest once you get down below tree line. We're above tree line at that point. But we started descending. And, what was interesting is as we were coming by other, quote, runners who are hiking down because, they're tripping on the thicket, the root system, that type of thing. They're like, oh, my God, what is that light? I was like, jump in behind. And we had a whole train of people following us down with the Betty. So that's kind of my introduction story into lupine lighting. And that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, I've had the opportunity to have you guys, help keep me active and do different stuff. And I can't thank you guys enough and Lupine for engineering this type of lighting and making it available, because frankly, otherwise I don't know where I'd be. And this is great. Appreciate you guys.
So I'll forever known you as follows: the Pied Piper of Hope Pass descent.
But I'll take that.
Good stuff. I went through and looked at the email that you sent me, and there was just so many things in there that you're involved with personally and really making a difference on this planet. And I was just jazzed to see that. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of leaf down through that. And So, first of all, publications, right? Running into the dark and success and the success cycle. So what's that about? What's that publication about? Thumbnail.
Yeah. So the first book, Running into the Dark, like 5 years ago, I ended up running across America, and there's a story behind that. But I was in a very dark place, had a calling to run across America, spent 18 months training to do that. And then I ran across America in 2 months, 51 and a half miles a day. And I ended up becoming a public speaker as a result of it. And all my audience was like, "Where's your book?" I was like, "I don't have a book." They told me, public speakers have books. And I ended up writing that thing, Running into the Dark. So that's the story of the transcontinental run, how that all happened. And then after I became this speaker, a lot of times people would ask me, how do you do that? How do you not give up? How do you go through, these ebbs and flows and ups and downs? And to me, in my athletic career, professional career, relationship career, there's a cycle to success, and it includes failure. And that's this second book, The Success Cycle. It's not, the biggest thing in the world, but I really wish, as I was thinking about it, like, God, nobody ever taught me that. This thing's less than 100 pages. And so anyway, I made something for what my client base was asking me for. And just FYI, Bill, I don't consider myself a writer. So if people actually go out and check these things out, I hope they're entertaining, but I am not by any stretch of the imagination Hemingway.
Got it. But, the essence of it is what I think people really appreciate. And I know I do already, and I haven't even read it. That's the beauty of meeting you. And it makes me always think about how I whine about, long training rides, or, geez, it's cold outside up here now. And do I want to get on the trainer? Can I get out? And I feel like just drinking a beer. And so whenever, like your story in particular, I'm like, what would Jason do right about now? He'd like get his ass out there and get it done no matter what. I got bad knees or whatever, which is nothing compared to what you go through. So I'm actually stoked to read The Success Cycle. And the thing about it is, that's the beauty of it in my mind, is that you just wrote it not being a Hemingway, because that's the real deal. That's what we want. That's what I want to listen to and read.
Yeah. And, a lot of what I've realized too, which is interesting, because my background, when I grew up, nobody in my family went to college. My mom, I was raised by a single mom secretary. She brainwashed me and my brother were going to college and graduate school. I ended up going to law school as a lawyer for a little bit. Then I had a business career, and I was doing this different stuff. And I always had this eye disease that was lurking in the background. I'd never tell anybody. I couldn't see because I looked, quote, normal. I looked sighted, and I had tremendous shame about this thing that I never even asked for, but also I didn't want help. Also, I thought people would treat me differently. I wouldn't have opportunities. If I told people, like, I didn't know blind people. I'm like, how are people? I worked for GE for 10 years. And, my thought was, if I tell them I can't see, how, I'm not going to get a promotion or other opportunities. Like, they're going to think like I'm, quote, this disabled person who can't do what other people can do. And what I've learned is, we can all do anything. We just do things differently. And I think having a challenge, and the other thing too, Bill, I know everybody has challenges. Like my eyesight thing is just somebody else's, whatever, dyslexia or, quadriplegia or cancer, or it doesn't even need to be like this dramatic thing, but it's, everybody is dealing with something. And the thing that my eyesight thing has taught me, which, it's kind of front and center for me because it deteriorates over time. And as I get to something like a strategy that can work, then my eyes get worse and then I need to adapt again. It's like the Lupine lighting system, right? I had a lighting system that worked for me before, but as my eyesight continued to deteriorate, it stopped working. So either I stop doing what I'm doing or I have to find something different. And, thank goodness, for Lupine and folks like you and your engineering team that make this tremendous equipment and tremendous technology. It's not, it doesn't need to be super fancy. It's just really high quality, high power light. And, for me, that adaptation is what enables me to get out the door. And, a lot of my training runs, I live in a city, Denver, Colorado, and I'm born and raised here. So I've memorized the streets in order to, train up the type of miles I need to do the events that I like to do, I'm running, probably about like 100 plus miles a week. So that requires a lot of time on streets. There's only so many, you have to cross streets to get to trails. I try to stay away from cars as much as possible. But I run a lot outside of normal driving hours, which means the early morning hours. So like 2 to 5 a.m. And there's no possible way. So that's an adaptation, but there's no possible way for me to do that unless I have, good lighting system. And like you say, I have those exact same thoughts. Like, dude, it's 2 a.m. I'd rather lay in bed. Things are kind of cranky and achy. And I appreciate you saying that, Bill. Sorry for going on so long.
No, I love it. And, I think that's where we all glean from the podcasts with exceptional people that I've had the fortunate time to meet through however connection. But so then once you've been exposed to situations like yours, and we did something a few podcasts ago with Jared Fenstermacher, and he's an adaptive athlete. So he was riding, a really great runner, racer, went to Bloom, I think, and raced cross country and track. And then he was big on the cycling scene. And then he always wanted to ride his bike across America. So he starts in Ocean City, Washington or Oregon, and he's going to ride to Ocean City, Maryland, or New Jersey. Okay. I got that a little foggy, but about halfway through it, somewhere in Iowa, I believe, he gets hit by a truck, and he wakes up halfway through the trip, and, he's greeted with the doctor telling him he's paralyzed from the waist down. So he goes back home, starts to rehab, gets a hand cycle, takes it back to Iowa where he got hit to complete his trip back to Ocean City, which he then made. But before he did that, he went and he had lunch with the guy who hit him. And so, yeah, that would be part of that cycle, I guess. But just when I think of you two guys in particular, then I get my ass up and go out and get on the bike and be thankful for what I can do. So it's just so great. I get so much out of these podcasts. So thank you very much for coming on to the show. Speaking of adaptation, Lupine has always upgraded their lights. And I remember back in the beginning when I first started distributing them in about 2000 or so, maybe a couple of years after that, you would get everybody thought they had 500 lumens with halogen, and everybody was, worshiping the ground those guys walked on. And then they went into a high intensity discharge light called the Edison, I think. And it was really a complicated process to get to 1,000 lumens.
Yeah.
And those lights were about $1,000. So each of the aforementioned. So then, we got into LEDs, and then the Betty was upgraded, to around 1,600 lumens, and we thought that was phenomenal. Then it went to like 21 or 23, and it was still $1,000. And then it went to 4,500 lumen, of course, and then 5,000 with Bluetooth, of course, which you have. And now again, they've gone to 5,400 lumens. And also we have a new alpha that's 8,000 lumens. So, they've never dropped the torch either. They just keep pushing on and on and on and become the leaders worldwide in being able to put lumens out. And it's just, and their lensing is great, and the quality of the light is great too. So we're just really happy to be associated with them. And then I've been in it for so long, and when I come across customers like you, then I'm even like, I feel like I'm really blessed to be able to distribute Lupine Lights. And so thanks all those guys in Germany. Thanks, Wolf, for founding the company and sticking with it. And thank you for using our light systems. And that's a great testimonial. So I'm always jazzed to hear your stories. And so that's the thing with Lupine, what they're doing. And I was just curious. You had mentioned we had talked about the Blicka, and I was wondering what you saw attractive in that, because I think you have a Pico now also. Is that correct?
Yep. I got a Pico over here. Shamelessly promoting my Lupine. Doesn't matter because you guys are Lupine, but
yeah, that's fine.
That's the Pico. Yeah, but so the Blicka is in between there, and the Pico gives me a ton of light, but I got 3 light settings, and on the dimmest light, what I do a lot of times is I end up at nighttime, I wear a headlamp around the house. So as soon as the sun goes down, I have a headlamp on, and that's kind of how I function. So if I'm going outside or going to the mailbox or walking the dog, I want a lot of light, right? And then if I'm indoors and I'm in a cabinet or I'm trying to find the rice or something else, that much light, my eyes they're light sensitive, but they're also they don't pick up a lot of light. Like I'm weird on both ends of the spectrum. So the Blicka has an ability, like with the red light and the green light and a lower dim light, it just has an additional level of functionality that my Pico or my my Betty, I don't use that around the house because I literally will blind my kids or my dog, or that's like for outdoor trekking. I need to be independent, or whatever. I'm doing battle with cars, and so that's where the Blicka comes in. From my perspective, because that lower setting on the Pico, there's not enough light, and it's almost too much light for me to be able to use functionally.
Gotcha. Well, we'll get you a Blicka before this is over here. I'll get your address, or you can send me your address, shipping address, and I'll get you one to try. So I was wondering about the green and the red, and the reason why. Oh, and I might add that the Betty comes now with a red center LED,
really?
So you can actually get that chip. And I'm going to find out if I can get that board with the red center on it for you for the Betty with the upgrade to 5400 lumens. So hopefully Germany is listening to this at some point, and I'm going to try to get that in on our next order, and then I can send you that. It's a plug and play upgrade, I think, and you can just put that in there, and it'll have a red center LED, which you seem to be able to using. So relative to the green and the red, getting back to the Blicka. So, I always like to recommend the green or the red, kind of as a tactical advantage, because it on people with regular vision, it doesn't dilate your pupil. So therefore you don't lose your night vision necessarily when you look away from it. So that's like a real tactical advantage. And then I'm curious to ask you if when you use the red or the green, which it sounds like you're going to with the Blicka, does that have the same effect? In other words, do your pupils dilate to adjust for night vision, or is that not happening at all? I'm curious.
So my pupils are like always at the same level dilation because they're trying to get as much light in as possible. Like they never close up. And that's one of the reasons why I have like light sensitivity. The red, and what I do is I operate off a contrast. So a lot of times when there's the red and the green enable there to be a certain level of contrast with different types of items when I'm alone and in the dark. Just using those specific colors, it gives me enough to be able to create contrast. So it has nothing really to do with losing your night vision or anything like that, but it lights up enough so I can create contrast. If I have the regular white light on, a lot of times it's blinding to me back. It's weird to explain, but that's where I'm at, right now. I've experimented with like all kinds of crazy lights. It's just, the functionality with what you have is beautiful. And I love the fact that it works differently for different people. Thanks.
Yeah. Do you use the app?
Yes.
The smartphone app for both your Pico and because I was just wondering about the low levels and if you're on 4-step mode and how do you use the app? What's your mystery potion there on that app?
With the Betty, I dial in a super high beam for really, really tricky situations, and then I'll go mid-level because I'm trying to have the battery pack last, 13 hours. But now I have before I only had the Betty, now I have the Pico. So what my strategy would be is, I'd use the Betty, like say I'm doing Leadville and I know I got 11 hours of nighttime at 5,000 lumen. I'm not going to be able to handle that, but I will need 5,000 for certain areas. So then I'll go down to probably like in the 2,000 range and then try to stay at the 1,500 range when it's not, quote, as technical or I know the area. And I also have a guide. I have reflectors on them. They're also calling out. They're calling out as well. So the light is in addition to having a person, reflectors on their shoes. I can see when they take graduated steps, like, step up, step down, root system, walking, doll head rocks, whatever. And then I'll have a really, really low setting. In Leadville, there's a couple areas where you actually have to run on the road and there's a white line. And then I'll just conserve the battery and use a super low setting and just light that white line. And I just run directly on the white line. I don't, that's what I do to conserve my battery.
That's like a rest period. When you get to the white line, you're like, oh, dude, I can rest now and just crank out another 20 miles or whatever. This is rest time. This is like a downhill on a bicycle, right? For you.
Yeah, it is.
So what can you just PowerPoint some of the races that you've done over the last, decade? Yeah,
I went a little crazy. I started off actually with marathon running. That's kind of how this thing began. And I was inspired by my uncle Ted Epstein. That's a whole different story if you're interested in that. But I did start off marathon running, and once I ran a marathon, I heard about Boston, so I wanted to run that. I qualified for that, ran that, went to triathlon, did Ironmans. I was looking at Ultraman triathlons, which is like a double Ironman. And then I ended up back in Colorado. I was living in Puerto Rico for 6 years on an assignment with GE. That came to an end, came back to Colorado, went through a divorce. And when I came back here, I was looking for something long distance. Well, the Leadville 100s right here. It's our hometown race. My uncle, who inspired me to even, get moving like this, he had done it back in the days when it was crazy, like a bunch of goofs lined up.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go,
Righteous. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. And I remember I went to sign up. This is when I was 40 years old. And when I was on the website said, okay, sign up for the run, but if you want a really epic challenge, try Lead Man or Lead Woman. I was like, what's this? And I was like, I was full of piss and vinegar. So I was like, okay, let's get this on. So I signed up for it. And what it turns out to be is you do the running events in Leadville and then the mountain biking events in Leadville. And I've never mountain biked. I didn't even have a mountain bike at the time, but basically you run the Leadville Trail Marathon, a 50-mile mountain bike race, or run on the same course, the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, a 10K run, and then the 100-mile run. And that's all in the span of 10 weeks. And then you do that, you're lead man or lead woman. And
you get a hell of a belt buckle, I would imagine, for that.
Yeah, right. I tried it. Actually, you don't get a buckle, then you get a pickaxe.
Of course.
Yeah. It's friggin' awesome. And so I tried that, failed. Actually, at the mountain bike event, I timed out like there was a 12-hour cutoff. I crossed in 13 hours, and then I DNF'd on the run, like at mile 85. And then I just, focused on running. I've done, did Leadville, the 100-mile run 5 times now. I've finished that. I've done Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is 135 miles through Death Valley. Woo. And Spartathlon, which is my favorite race. I think the hardest race I've ever done, which is 153 miles from Athens to Sparta. And that one, there's a time cutoff of 36 hours. Most 100-mile races, the time cutoff is 30 hours. At Spartathlon, the 100-mile time cutoff is 22 and a half hours, and you still got 50 miles to go. I mean, you basically got to be running the whole time.
Wow. And are you Greek by any chance?
No, well, I am now. I'm a son of Sparta. I was able to finish.
Of course.
After 3 attempts, I was able to finish.
Nice.
but no, I'm not. I'm Latin by nature.
No, mine too.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. I was going to law school at some point in my life. So it's like, well, you better take Latin, son. And I'm like, I go, this has got to be the most boring thing in high school that anybody could take. Although, that was my first eye opener to like partying, because we used to have this fake bacchanalia, every year in Latin class, and we'd drink grape juice and stuff. And, that was a chance, when I'm 15 years old and all the chicks are walking around in togas, right? In 1976, right? I'm like, whoa, this is awesome, dude. I want to be a Roman. So before I ask you what you got planned, I was going to say, my dad was, he retired from General Electric in Schenectady. He was a lifer. Yeah. He was vice president of the gas turbine division at one point. So I was just curious as to what part of GE that you worked in. What was your expertise?
I was in GE Capital, and I worked in commercial finance. So I was in Colorado, and then consumer finance. So I was in Puerto Rico, and when I was in Puerto Rico, I was the general manager of GE Capital in the Caribbean. So I did the finance side.
Wow, that's awesome. So let me guess, you were in there about 2008 or 9 in GE Capital. That must have been a harrowing time.
The end. Yeah.
The end.
Right before all of Capital got cut off and sold off. Yeah.
Right. Good stuff.
Yeah.
GE is an interesting storyline for sure. So what do you got planned coming up? What's on your radar?
I never kind of got to the end of the things I've done, but kind of like the coup de grace for me was a run across America, where I ran from Los Angeles to New York. And that happened 5 years ago. And up until that point, I was
3,600 miles, right?
Yep. Well, a little over 3,000 miles.
Okay, right. 3,063 to be precise.
Yeah.
Wow.
And after that, and that was 2 marathons a day, nonstop. My mom was my only crew person. She was 70 at the time. And that began when I was in a very, very deep depression, the crossroads, rock bottom for me. And going up to that, Badwater was a training run for my run across America. Like most of the time, Badwater is that's like a bucket list item, but it was a training run for this Transcon. And after I got back from that Transcon, my running really changed, because people come up with all kinds of great races, the Barkley Marathon, last man standing.
Right.
There's everything. Europe has great race, difficult. There's always going to be, difficult races. But what I realized, I did a lot of growing up on, that Transcon, and I realized, life's not about race. It's not about these individual things. It's about, it's not about being the best. It's about helping other people to be their best. And that kind of began what I'm doing now. And, I still run. I like the 100-mile distance because I just like that. I like the grind. I like going through nighttime. You meet people, you bond. So I like that. I'll do a few 100-mile races this year. I don't know what or where. There's one here local that I've won a couple times, so I might go for the 3-peat. But we'll see. And I don't know. What I try to do now is I try to help at least one person accomplish a 100-mile race every year. And I don't, charge people for coaching or anything like that. I just, talk to them and I help them run and do that different stuff. The other thing that I've done is I always say my calling was to run across America. Like I had a faith calling, which was what got me to do this Transcon. What I've realized after that is, I don't know that the calling was necessarily to run across America, because afterward, all of a sudden, companies started calling me up, asking me to tell them the story. It launched a motivational speaking career. That's what I do right now. I mentioned that before. I have these books and stuff, but I think the calling is to get on stage and to tell the story. And people, a lot of times they'll come up and they'll say, "Oh, that's so inspiring," this and that. And I think everybody has an amazing story, Bill. And I think what is inspiring about me getting up on stage and telling the stories, I get up there and I relive it. And, it's hard. And it's, I'm not like I've been at GE. I've had keynote speakers get up and talk, and, they're talking heads a lot of times, and there's no emotion, there's no authenticity. I'm not going to be that person. And so I get up there and I retell it and I relive it. And it takes like 2 to 3 days to recover because you're going through. And that's what's important. And what I've realized is that impacts people. It makes a difference in people's lives. And specifically now, I started a nonprofit, which is called Inspire Connection, focused on youth. And it's intended to train up speakers, because I do a lot of speaking also to youth, which is free of charge. It's my philanthropy, but it makes a difference. And I see the youth these days as struggling a lot. And if you can put these inspiring stories of struggle and triumph in front of them, they can know that it's okay. They can make it through. I got speakers who have disabilities, quadriplegia, car wrecks, blindness, people who've dropped out of school, self-harm, have overcome suicidality, a lot of different stories, who tell these kids their story. And, they show up for the talk and they look really put together, right, Bill?
Right.
And, we all do, right? And then they launch into, okay, this was my struggle. And then it's relatable. And the kid's like, oh my gosh. And they're like, this is what I learned from my struggle. And it's basically perseverance. You can go on. Life matters. Connection is important. We can have that. I felt isolated. I felt like nobody understood, like I was all alone. And, and they made it. And the idea is to inspire connection within youth. And so we have that speaker program. We also have like a skateboarding program, which this is one of the boards. We give away skating equipment to kids, because what I've found is, and I learned this from my youngest daughter, as she learned to skateboard. Skateboarding is one of the best sports, I believe, around. Tremendous athleticism. In order to learn to do like one trick skateboarding, you have to fall like hundreds of times. And it hurts. Yeah, it hurts. And they encourage each other after they fall. They encourage one another to get up and to try again. And that is so, so amazing, because a lot of times in life, Bill, when we fall down, people don't encourage us to try again. They don't come over. They don't lend a helping hand. They'll look at us on the ground all skinned up and kind of like, I don't want to get involved. That doesn't happen at a skate park. Somebody takes a bad fall, people go over and help out a stranger, get up. Are you okay? You almost had that. You could do it. And so anyway, those are 2 things. And when you ask what I got going on, it's not really about the running, but I obviously tried to do that, do a few 100-milers, but there's not like a bucket list thing. What I'm really here to do from my perspective is to try to help other people be their best. And that really feeds me. And I need to be doing more of that.
That's a great narrative. And that inspired me, inspires all of us. It was unwittingly segue into what's on your radar, but that turned out to be, a great launching point to really get to the basis of Jason and what he's doing in life. And that's very encouraging and inspirational. And the message is so non-denominational. It's like everybody, like you said, everyone's got something in their life that they're up against. And when you see someone like yourself, who's had way more of that on his plate than most, then it encourages you to stand up. If you fall on the skateboard, to get down, or if you fall on my mountain bike, you get up and just do it. And that's more important than winning the race necessarily. It's just that you're doing it, and it's part of the process, right? My mom used to always say that, maybe I was having some silly ass problem as to why I couldn't do something. And she'd say, well, I'd say some stupid problem that I was having, that why I couldn't do something. And she would say, it doesn't matter what the problem is. Don't you understand that everybody has got some problem that they have to overcome? And it may seem insignificant to you, but it's not insignificant to them.
That's right.
And that's kind of where you're going, right? With part of your message. Am I right on that?
That's right. And that's a very important thing, because a lot of times, like think about one of the senses that you could lose. Eyesight is probably the worst people would want to lose. And that's what I always say. I'm like, that struggle, yeah, that's a big deal to me. It's a big deal. It messes me up. Like, I'm, you have to get trained to walk around with a cane. Like, there was a point in my life I didn't have to do that. I'm at a point now where I have to do that. And for me to stand there with a cane and identify myself as a blind person, I'm not a blind person. I'm Jason, right?
Right.
But that situation for me could be that, for me, it's this level of significance. For a person who, say they get laid off from their job the first time, they have a comfortable living, that situation could be this level for them. And it's not for any of us to judge, right? It's not that we all experience struggle, just like your mom was saying. But when it's, quote, extreme struggle to us or to whomever that person is, it's the exact same situation that you're going through. And frankly, that's the reason for this thing, the success cycle, because that's
Could you hold narrative. That book up right in front of your face for us? Because the background. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yes.
Hold it right there. Yep, good. Thanks.
So that's the narrative of that book, which is basically there's a process for how all of this happens. And it happens to all of us. You could just plug and play in a different situation. It could be a divorce. It could be a lost job. It could be whatever. But for whomever is handling it, it's at a high level. And it's not for any of us to judge each other. That's the other thing I've realized in this journey, Bill. Our purpose on this earth is to help one another, not to engage in a caste system. It's really, truly to help one another. And we have all kinds of opportunities. And I think your mom's message, that's like the antithesis, or it's foundational for us to actually get to that point, to helping other people. Because a lot of times we see different stuff. We get stuck in this judgment or this assessment situation instead of just jumping in there. Like this is another thing that's really cool. One of the coolest things about, being, quote, disabled, which I hate that word because I call myself specially abled. But, if I'm traveling around, I travel with my cane. Say I go back east. A lot of times I used to think, if I go back east, people are kind of tough, they don't really engage. They're always checking you out, making sure that you're okay before they're going to engage with you and that type of thing. Well, when I started using a cane, I was back east at an airport in New York, and I had my cane. I was tapping around trying to find something. You know what happens in New York? If people see a person who's struggling, but they're trying, they come to help them. They get in there and they get engaged. I'm out here in Denver. Nice people and stuff like that, but people are less apt to get engaged, to help one another. And that's kind of like this larger narrative of when we see somebody struggling, we need to get in there to help them, whatever that may be, Bill. And, it makes a difference in our lives. It makes our lives richer. And by helping another person, the other thing we do is, we realize how great we have it. And so, a lot of times too, we have I have pity parties too. I'm not always I don't always have like the attitude of gratitude. There's times that I'm like, God, this really sucks. I hate this, but, when we help another, I find that we're at our best. And the other narrative too, if there's one thing that I can get out, people are still listening to this thing. It is that I believe absolutely everything and anything is possible. And I can't tell you how many times I debate with friends or like new people that come into my life. I'm like, that's what I believe. That's how I live my life. And as people start to spend more time with me, they're like, holy crap. Like they start to believe it. They're like, anything is possible. I'm like, you're damn right. If you believe in that, and, if there's negative talk, or, if you have your own negative talk, get out of your head. If people around you are having negative talk, disassociate with them and find people who are going to tell you, you are capable. You can do that. This is possible, because that's the message. I want to challenge every person to think, what am I capable of doing? Because we have set the bar too low for ourselves. I'm telling you that right now, Bill. And the other question is, what is possible? People need to contemplate those two questions on a daily basis, on a regular basis, because what we only have one life. And at the end of it, usually we realize how precious that is, right?
Right.
But every day is precious.
Right. Right.
You've told me as you go out for rides, I know you're challenging yourself. You're going on different terrain, different courses. You're like, okay, I'm going to go with the buddy who's better than me. Holy crap, we're going to try this. You're like, wow, I didn't know I was capable of that. Well, that's That's true in every stream of our life. And that's true in athletic pursuits, in business pursuits, in relational pursuits, in spiritual pursuits. What am I capable of? We are capable of so much more. We just got to go out and do it. And that's truly living life. That's like Oprah, be your best self, or, whatever the latest tagline thing is, they're right. But we got to actually do that. And that, I think, that's the important part. And that's what I hope, when I go out and run these races, and this is also hard for me. Like when I go and run these races, I wear like a big yellow sign with black letters that says blind. And a lot of times people are confused until like I trip and fall or run into somebody or whatever, then they're like a little more gracious because they think I don't know what they think, they think, is this guy faking or what, what's going on? But that statement allows me to have some additional conversations by putting myself out there. And I didn't always like that. I don't like the attention, but I realized in order to fulfill my mission, there's certain things I have to do. And I got to, put down some pride and get out of my comfort zone in order to, help other people to be their best so I can be my best.
You've said so much there, but you've articulated so well that, again, it's motivational. How about when you grow up, when you hear certain things that your grandma says or whatever, and you kind of, whatever, like at Christmas time, everyone says to you when you're a kid, it's better to give than receive. And you're like, yeah, how can that be? This is bullshit. I'd rather get this. I'd rather get my new bicycle than give one. I mean, are these people crazy? This is why I don't listen to old people, because they don't know shit. So this is one I've been saying lately is, I tell younger people when they tell me about what they're going to do, and they're so, set upon this is the right thing to do. And I say, do you realize, of course, that you're an idiot? And how do I know that? Because when I was about, I'm sorry to say, it took me till about age 50 or 55. Maybe I'm still an idiot in some people's eyes, and that's okay. But I realized that I was an idiot in 18, and that immediately takes me off the idiot list. But if you don't realize that, then I guess you're still on the list. My point is that you hear things and you disregard them necessarily or take them lightly, but don't. Because that message is, now I totally get it. It's way better to give than to receive. And Mother Teresa knew what was going on, man, right? And you know what's going on. And, I think that all of us maybe don't want to admit it so much, but your life is way more rewarding when you're out doing something that's helping people than just doing something for yourself. But in actuality, that's the yin and yang of it, right? When you're doing something to help somebody else, you're giving yourself the best gift too. So it's a win-win. Is that a good articulation? I'm not so good at that, but I tried right there. Maybe you can carry that to the next level.
I think you did a great job, Bill. I'm your brother from another mother. I got to meet you live, dude. I'm like, I got to spend time with this guy. Yeah, you got it. You articulated what I've learned along the way too.
And I don't want to make it sound like what you're doing is easy by any means, or what any of us do. But that's what you got to do. And sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, but you got to do it. And then at the end of that day, at the end of that week, at the end of that month, at the end of that life, you're like, yeah, that was worth it. There is no failure when you're doing it that way.
You're right on, Bill. I mean, and there, there's an important thing that you mentioned there that I think it deserves some clarification or expounding on, which is, there's in life, there's talkers and there's doers. Mm-hmm. There's talkers and there's doers. And you know what? Like you gave that little because the talkers are like, oh yeah, I got a friend that did this. And I'm like, and it's not about building anything up. Life is about doing. Life is not about talking, and talking's okay, but you got to get out there. You got to get out the door and you got to do it. You got to do life. You can't sit around pontificating all the time. And that's frankly that's the difficult part of life that we've created, because we've created this environment or this life for human beings where we think comfort is the goal. And it's not, if you're uncomfortable, it's not okay. I got to go get a pill, or I got to get a better car, or, my air conditioner's broke. Right? We're always in these climate controlled environments, right?
Yeah.
Life is not about being comfortable. And if we are very comfortable, you need to change it up and add some discomfort into your life. Otherwise, you're never going to grow. You're going to become a sloth. You're going to become pudgy and out of shape. And you're going to be at the doctor asking for another pill. Why does my knee hurt? Why does my back hurt? The people who are out in the fields working hard, moving your body, it hurts. There are no shortcuts for this stuff. Bill, if I'm going to run a 100-mile race or a transcon, there are no shortcuts for putting in the miles and the hours upon hours upon hours of lonely training time that you got to put in. It's the same thing for work. It's the same thing for spiritual growth. It's the same thing for relational growth. If you have a relationship with somebody, you got to put in the time and the work into that relationship. It's not like it just happens and you're magically attracted to each other. You got to put in the work. And that's the payoff, like you just articulated. By doing that, by investing that time, you're helping another person, and that's helping yourself because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's just I always have this thing, like, and I challenge my kids, be a doer, don't be a talker. Talkers are so busy talking, they can never do.
Yep.
You never see doers, the people that are doing the crazy stuff. They're not talking because they're too busy doing. The talkers are talking about them, right? And that's what I always find myself. Like if I start, no,
it's good, man, because unfortunately, I went through about 3 different great stories to tell as you were talking, because it lit up my memory on certain things. And then by the time you moved on to another phase of that narrative, I forgot what the hell I was going to say the one before that. And I'm like, damn it, that was so good. I wanted to jump in there. And so I've just lost 3 great thoughts. But thank you, because they'll come back eventually, maybe by the end of this podcast. We're not known for short podcasts here in Mount
Right on.
What was I going to say? Oh, well, first of all, obviously, we all know this from bicycling and running and endurance athletics, that the process, you got to love the process. And how many Olympians do you hear talk about that? It's like, I love training. I even love that more than the competition. It's the process, and it's the health and the mental health that comes from that. Okay. So if you've got anything to say, go ahead, and I'll try to come back to those damn thoughts. I had some good ones.
Well, one thing I do like what you said about was like the process and the training. That's an amazing thing to experience. Athletics taught me it the best, because I got to tell you, in this book, Running into the Dark, I got this picture of me when I was 33 and I was in Puerto Rico, and I was about like 30 pounds heavier, had 3 chins. I was standing on, my buddy's sailboat in the Caribbean, holding one kid, big old, rum and Coke gut, smoking cigars, out of shape. I was stressed, walking heart attack. And people always ask, they're like, well, how do you, they think like you magically transform or you're always this way. I was like, nah, it was work, and it's consistency and just work. It's process.
Yeah. So part of it came back. So I grew up in Ohio, in a steel town, Youngstown, Ohio ish. And, I had a big family. I came from a big family, and Italian family, and all my uncles. And I tell the story often to those who know me, probably to the point of boredom, I'm sure. But they all survived World War II, which was a horrible life event, and they got through it, and they saw their best friends die in front of them and stuff. They made it back to the States, and they're like, now I just want to work in the steel mill, and I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to put in, for my 40 years, and then I'm out. And when I do, I've lived through World War II. I've lived through this, arguably tough job working in the steel mills. And then I'm going to sit in the backyard, and I'm going to drink Black Label and I'm going to beer, that is, in those days, Carling Black Label, not the Scotch. I'm going to drink beer and I'm going to grow tomatoes and I'm going to watch my grandkids and I'm just going to retire. It's going to be wonderful. And so many of those guys died right after that. It's like, dude, you didn't, including my father, who didn't even get to enjoy like 2 months of his retirement. So what I wanted to say about that was how that I continually got to put that in my head. So like with Lupine Lights, everyone said, you're getting older, dude. Are you going to start getting stuff off your plate? And I said, well, I am, but mainly the stuff I don't like doing. Certain parts of the job I like doing, and I'm going to keep doing that. So then, okay, I'm going to develop a thought here, and you'll pick up on it pretty quick. So that's the first level of thinking, that I'm trying to remember about everybody in my past. But then it was like, all of a sudden, I have some annuities. I worked for Dun & Bradstreet for a while too, and I was going down the same road you're going down. And so now I have some annuities and some retirements and stuff. And of course, the question is like, do you want this for 10 years or do you want this for 20 years? Or do you want this reduced amount for the rest of your life? And right away, I'm thinking, I'm going against the actuarials here. I'm not going to put any kind of an end date on my life, implied or expressed or otherwise. It's like, I want the life, dude. I want the life. I'm going for it. I'm going to beat your actuarial scientists. I'm going to punch them in the face. And so then that I kind of stretched that into my own career path here. And I'm saying, you know what? I'm not giving up this work. I'm not retiring from it. I'm just going to evolve it into another higher level. And maybe I can help some other people out. And maybe I can help myself out by helping them out. And so I quit. Like somebody said to me, you want to open up another bike shop or a couple of bike shops again, because that's what I did. And, for a couple of years there, as I was approaching Medicare and stuff, I was like, nah, I ain't doing that. Now, finally, I got it made. Why would I want to take on that problem? And now I'm saying to myself, well, it's just another day tomorrow, man. So if somebody says, hey, let's open this bike shop up, I'm like, yeah, why not? What the hell? And I'm trying to change my thinking and getting away from that. What do they call that? Cradle to grave mentality that we have in the United States. And so you're touching upon a lot of my thought process lately, especially. And so I thought, you need to put that thought process back in life about a couple of decades. And I was fortunate enough that I kind of started that thinking back then when I left Dun & Bradstreet. However, now it's time to take it to a new level. And talking with you, I hope that we can have an effect on people's lives about that cradle to grave crap. So I know you want to comment on that. Help me out here. Is that thought valid in your repertoire?
Yeah, you got it, man. You you made me rethink my life. So I got this eyesight thing that's going. I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights. I was at church one Sunday. It was in November. And I always operate like in threes. And I had heard about, I've always thought about the Northern Lights. And I'd heard about them once, second time, third time, it's a Sunday. I'm leaving church and the greeter guy, I talked to him a bit and he tells me, something. I was like, oh yeah, where are you from? He's like, Alaska. He's like, we're getting pelted right now. He's like, but the Northern Lights are like going crazy. That was the third time. I went home. That was at like 11 a.m. I went home, booked a ticket to Fairbanks, Alaska. I was in Fairbanks the next day on Monday. And with the Northern Lights, sometimes you can see them, sometimes you can't. Sometimes people go and look. And I booked a tour and I saw the Northern Lights. And that was, that's like a wild hair. Another situation like that, I've heard about the Camino de Santiago. I was talking to my mom. We were both in a funky situation. Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage like in Spain. And there was some stuff going on and there, our conventional way of dealing with it wasn't working. I told my mom, I was like, let's go to this place. I've never been. I don't even know what it is. She said yes. 2 weeks later, we were in Spain walking hundreds of miles across this thing. And what I've learned in life, like a lot of people are like, how do you do that? How can you just take time off? How can you just, like, there's all these, anybody can do it. You just got to choose to do it, and everything else will line up. And what happens is we get so caught up in this conventional way of life or this conventional thought process. Like you said, cradle to grave. I'm all about, quote, unconventional. And people always, you're going against the grain, you're doing this. I'm like, call it whatever you want. Maybe somebody has to do that. People have to do that. Our youth are starting to do that now, Bill. Things are changing, and it's a good thing because, frankly, just like you say, the thing I've realized, I've gotten hit by cars 36 times now. I could have been taken out any one of those. One of them was running across America at highway speeds. All right, there's a good possibility I'm not in front of you right now, but that's what I realize with my kids every day or doing things every day. I got to do it to my best. I'm talking to you right now. I got to give everything I got to you because tomorrow's not promised to me. I'm going to be lucky and I'm going to be grateful if I got it, but I'm living today to my best. And from the moment, this is the other thing I always think about every morning, from the moment I wake up and I take that first breath, I'm like, holy cow, I got another day. From that moment until the time that my head hits the pillow at night, I am going to do at least one thing to somehow make this world a better place. And I don't know what that, I'm not going telling people about it, but somehow, some way, it could be picking up trash. It could be helping a stranger. It could be helping my kids. It could be just listening. It could be working on my side. Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways, but we got to constantly make our life have value, and having value is not, I'm going to go do my 40 years. I'm going to get to retirement. I'm going to do life. I can't tell you. I know so many stories about, just like you've said, where people work their butt off, amass a bunch of wealth, they retire, and a year later they're dead. And that's not life. I mean, that's not life.
So we definitely, for sure, we don't want to necessarily convince younger people that I don't have to go to school now. I don't have to work really hard at this job because I just got this notion that I'm going to go off and play guitar and do artwork in, Yosemite Canyon, and I'm going to climb rocks and shit. It's like, well, hold on here. Hold on just a minute. Okay.
That's true. Balance.
Yeah. So got to have a little balance, because we got this position where Jason and I can talk about these glorious things, but you still got to build a bit of a foundation in the society before you can help it. You got to be a supporting rung. And then, that's kind of the benefit of a different age that you're at, not growing older, just a different age.
That's right.
So I really liked your three-part, do things in three. Okay. So when you were younger, speaking of being younger, or at least for me, and maybe mostly, going to college, getting a job, so on and so forth, that's you have more of a structured life and a structured mindset, and it's more cradle to gravish. There's all kind of things that if you want to have kids, that's the time you got to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So you have these notions, but oftentimes you let real life, and rightly so, I think, get in the way and say, you know what? No, I'm going to work another 5 years at General Electric, secure some money. My kids, I want to get them. I want to do my fatherly thing here and make sure everybody's good to go. So you have those notions in between rum and cokes, but you don't pursue them because you're doing those things that you do when you're at a younger age that need to be done. But as you grow older, or at least for me, especially like after I left the corporate world, then I was free to if something came to my mind, I was more willing and free to pursue it. And so, in other words, instead of being more structured in my thinking, instead of being the science major at Penn State, then I became the liberal arts major at Penn State, the older I got. And then, so if things would come across, like a person's name would come in front of me, that's the basis of a lot of this podcast, right? I don't plan any of this shit out, Right. And I was just talking to Hob, you know, and I was like, whoa, yeah, that's crazy. I'd forgotten about that. So, I kind of don't go by the 3 thing, although I'm going to start taking note of that. But so often now my life is more driven by, yeah, I just heard about that race. And is he going down that race? And then all of a sudden things just pop in your mind, or you come across things for whatever reason. And you say, I'm doing that. Where when you were younger, that's not on my calendar, dude. And I'm not putting it there because I can't. You feel like elaborating on that one?
So one thing that was really interesting, it's the follow through, like you're talking about. I think there's, and I have a similar, we have a similar, background. In my younger days, I was very structured, very conventional. We went to law school as a lawyer for a while, went to the corporate world, worked for GE. I worked for Western Union, ran a nonprofit. And it was very much about amassing different things. And frankly, because I lived that way, I'm able to do what I do now.
Yes. Young people, take note.
Yeah. Just like you're saying, like you can't just, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have a home for my 3 kids, or I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing right now. So you got to do the time, you got to do the work, and you learn a lot, but there comes a time where you can make a choice where you can break free, or you can just do things differently. But I lost my
See, it happens. People say that all the time when they're around me. I've been doing too much ganja butter in my coffee maybe in the morning. I got to cut back on that shit, but I do have glaucoma. So yeah, I do, but very mild. And, my doctor's great, and we're working with it, and it's not affecting me yet. But, to that point, if you don't take care of that, because it's the silent, killer, and all about that shit. So anyway, I digress there into the ganja butter in my coffee. That's prescribed to me, people. So, but continue. I hope your thought came back, because that's the way I roll sometimes.
Yeah. So one of the things that it did come back, and as you were talking about it, kind of, I'm living my life, and if somebody decides to open up a bike shop, then I will. What was interesting with how you and I connected, because I saw you as a person, as a path to be able to get to this product that enables me to keep doing what I'm doing. And when Javi did tell me about you, the great thing was that you persisted. Like, we had a tough time connecting, but we kind of kept chasing each other down. A lot of times in life, Bill, like, there'll be a great idea, or you'll hear about somebody, you're like, God, I want to talk to that person. But we're so distracted with life and how we're living it, that it's like one of those thoughts. It just goes on by. What was beautiful about what you did was you had a laser focus. And you were like, I'm going to talk to Jason. And I was stoked, because I'm like, great, I want to talk to Bill, and I want to talk to Lupine. But the follow through, when we need to do something, when that passion, when that spark hits us, we need to do that. Like, I can't tell you, because I run, right? And after I talk, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to run a marathon. I'm like, sign up. But I've never ran. I was like, sign up, and you have committed. Then you're going. Until that, you're just, you're not doing it. And I think that's life. Like, we get those passion flames, we get those sparks. Yeah. We gotta act on it. And sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm into something I wasn't really ready for. But that's a little bit of, living life outside your comfort zone.
We do that all the time. I don't join anything. I don't like joining anything, because I figure it diminishes yourself in some way, even if it's a small way. That's more than I care to. But I'm a member of the bicycling team, and we have an informal group of riders. That's the beauty of cycling. You can go anywhere in the world and just go to the local bike shop and find out when the next ride is. And, you're instantly amalgamated into the community. So I have a couple of friends and then teammates, and they'll be talking about this season coming up and about going to certain races, and they're going. And so that's part of the beginning of that process. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that with you, and they're like, okay, well, we're signing up. So you in, the team signing up or whatever. And then you go out with those people and you start training for that particular event with them, maybe casually, but still you're doing it. But you're right. The whole process begins with me saying, oh, so you guys are doing that? Well, I'm in. And then once you put your name in, then it becomes reality. It's kind of like the Matrix a little bit, you know? So, which brings me to this subject when you said you can do anything is possible. So you start with Elon Musk, and he's talking about the fact that, he just decided to put a guy on Mars and he's going to do it. But first he had to make that statement publicly, right? Yeah. So he's going to do it. And so then I saw this one podcast presentation. And so then the next thing in that thought process is the guy in the wheelchair, Stephen Hawking, brilliant guy, right? He just passed away. So he goes into this whole chalkboard math thing about how basically it's a 1 in a billion odds that we are in a base reality by his calculations. So you go from Elon Musk saying anything's possible and Jason Romero, and then you go into the segue about Stephen Hawking proving it mathematically. And then the third person in that chain was Neil deGrasse Tyson. You know that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, of course. So, and he said, I just took a look at Stephen Hawking's math, and, he's kind of the layman guy for astrophysicists and time travel and all that. And he says, I don't have the wherewithal to challenge Stephen Hawking's math. So therefore, Elon Musk is correct and Stephen Hawking is correct. The odds that we are in a base reality are 1 billion to 1. So the odds are that we're in a simulation. So, okay, that's like pie in the sky stuff. And I don't expect anybody to go, oh, yeah, Bill said this. But what I do suggest is every time somebody does something, or I run across somebody like yourself that seemingly does something that's impossible, I go, well, there you go. So there you go. There's where we're in a simulation. And he decided he was going to run down Hope Pass. And everybody said, well, if he can do it, I'm following him. And he had the right light, the Betty. So how does that resonate?
I don't know that I would put me at
the Stephen Hawking level.
Yeah. Great company. But the other thing too, it is great company because at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? And this is what I learned as a lawyer. Law is only good case law until another case comes along and turns it on its head.
Yeah,
right?
Good one.
And it's just like, Stephen Hawking or whatever, or, Degrassi, this point that we're making, Bill, Jason, and we're making this point until, quote, somebody comes and turns it on his head, if that's what they want to believe. I think this kind of goes to, what you want to believe is what will be. And that's the reason why I put myself out there and why I say this to other people. Otherwise, I could just have it be to myself and live my life merrily because I believe it. I know it. I've experienced it. It's the truth. But what you believe is what will be. And that is where attitude comes in. If we find ourselves like, and I've found myself there too, like, geez, I don't want, it takes me 3 hours to get out of bed, to get out the door. And then I have a shitty run, right? Yeah. Versus me just popping out like, I'm going out for 5 hours this morning. It's going to be freaking awesome. And I bump into my cousin and I see something, like my eyes perceive something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think my eyes are perceiving like the mountains. Like I can't see, but like I'm seeing something, right? I mean, what you believe is what is going to be, Bill. And if you're like, I'm going out, I'm going to have a great trip in, Jamaica, that's what's going to be. Or it could be, I'm going to have a great trip at, downtown Denver today. That's what's going to be. And, all things are possible. And that's the other thing too. If we find ourselves getting caught up in this intellectual turmoil of trying to, analyze or deduce, I think that's a problem. There's a great movie out that's a true story about the man who knew infinity. It's a movie for folks. There's a book on it as well. But you've heard of Good Will Hunting, that movie, like
Sure.
Matt and Robin Williams.
Matt Damon, yeah.
Yep. So basically, this guy was noted in that movie, but the Good Will Hunting is kind of a knockoff of this true story. And what happened was way back when, like 100 years ago, in India, there was this guy who just knew math. He could do equations, and they didn't understand why. I had no formal training, no nothing. Well, the Brits owned India at the time, right? They found him. They shipped him up to Cambridge, and they had him do the math. The people in England at Cambridge could not understand the math, and this guy would just give the answers. He'd be like, okay, here's the answer. And in England, they're like, well, you have to do the proof. He's like, I don't have, that's the answer. He knew the answer. He didn't have to prove, and they never understood. He was never formally trained anything. And that was the craziest thing, was people got so caught up on, well, how did you get that? Well, you can't make it up. Like, it was a level of math, nobody could make up, but they wanted to understand how his mind worked to get there. He's like, I can't explain it, but that's the answer right there. He ended up going back. I mean, look it up. I think the guy's name is, you got to look it up. The Man Who Knew Infinity. But that's the story right there for what we're talking about.
Probably Patel. That's a safe bet, right? If he's from India, like, they use that name interchangeably, man, for first and last. And it's like, how many Patels are there? Dude,
why did my parents name me Patel? Dang it. I want some of that. But
so that's great.
When you know something and you believe it, that's all you need to do. You don't need to waste more of your life in humanity trying to bring others along. You could tell them.
Yes. And you know how you've changed the course of humanity? Just like a butterfly flapping its wings. Because the minute you say you're going to do something, and then somebody else tells you that's impossible, and here's why. Okay, then when you do it, then that person goes, I was wrong. I wonder how much other things I'm wrong about. So it may seem insignificant, but you almost need the yin and the yang, because you need that person to go, it can't be done, because then you've challenged him. And when you do it, he says, shit, I was damn wrong about that. I better rethink my thinking process. And to that effect, I'm going to throw some Taoism in here, if that's okay. I think a lot of my stuff comes from Rusty Jaw Love in Jamaica, but he's more of a scholar than I am about Lao Tzu. But like, a couple of thoughts there that I always love to reference in my mind, in my happy mind, is it's better to lead from behind. Right? I love that one. And that's also a lazy man's approach, which I like taking. I mean, why do all that stuff? Like you said, why try to disprove it? Because you're going to be wasting your time. Just go with it. So yeah. So lead from behind is one of my favorites. And people go, how can that be? That's totally an anti-Occidental culture, right? How can you lead from behind? Can you imagine you laid that on your boss at GE? It's like, yeah, I'm just taking an office in the back, and everybody will kind of follow my lead, and I'll just go in and challenge them every day. And that's how I lead. And they're like, no, we need to send you to some GE. What was that, Six Sigma shit? And I shouldn't say shit because it's solid, but you knew Six Sigma, right?
I feel you. Yep.
Dude, yep. Six Sigma. So, yeah. So where I was going with that was, I'm not sure. There it is. I lost it again.
But
the other thing about Taoism is, to reference a point that you made way earlier, and I've lost track. We've gone in so many directions, but it is those who know it don't speak it. Those who speak it don't know it. How about that?
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
So just like the guy from India, Patel, he goes, I just know it. I don't have to speak of it. I don't have to prove it. It's just the way it is. All right. Sorry.
I love it. All
right, boy, I think we got to do this again. But we got to stop sometime. I mean, not really, but yeah.
That's
we only have to stop for this podcast. So I'll let you have the parting comments until we meet again.
I appreciate you, Bill. I don't even know to what extent, great. Thanks, Lupine. But what you just left me with right there kind of like rocked my world. So I appreciate you being a fellow human, and I'm just glad there's people like you on this earth, man. Thanks.
Right on. Same here. I feel the same way about you. Thanks for everything. And like I said, let's keep in touch. Let's do this again. Let's talk again about the theme should be like help other people's and you help yourself.
I love it.
And if everyone does that, if everyone's, there's a Cordy Byron, a local singer, and he always starts and ends with be excellent to each other. And by doing that, by helping other people and being excellent to them, you're actually being more excellent to yourself somehow.
I love it.
All right.
Let peace invade the world, man. Thanks, bro.
Peace out. We'll talk again soon. Shoot me an address, and we're going to get you a blick at it for you to test out some of these ideas. So as we always say, peace out. Long live long rides / runs.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Peace out.
We'll see you, Bill.
Love you, brother. Take care.